Radio Sultanate of Oman, 90.4 FM, and the Sultan Qaboos Center for Islamic Culture presents 2012 Season 3 of Reaching Out Through Dialogue, presented by Hatem Al-Abdissalam, hosting a group of intellectuals and experts from different fields. Don't miss the interesting discussions on science, comparative religion, culture, education, human behavior, and social issues. Reaching out through dialogue. Only in the holy month of Ramadan.
Did you know that over 1 million books are published every year? Did you know that the top 10 jobs in 2010 did not exist just 6 years before that? And the internet, there were 2.1 billion searches on Google. And just 4 short years later, the number had increased to a staggering 31 billion.
To whom were these questions addressed before?
To whom were these questions addressed before Google?
It might shock
It might shock you to know how quickly we have increased our media use. It took 38 years for the radio to have 50 million audience members. Facebook reached this number in just 2. What is the significance of this new information?
Does it have an effect on us?
Does it have an effect on us? Does it change the way that we seek information?
Does it change the way that we seek information?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. All praise be to Allah, the Master of the Day of Judgment, and peace and blessings be upon His Messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. O Allah, grant us knowledge, wisdom, and sincerity. Dear listeners, I'm your host, Hatem Al-Abdissalam. I salute you all with a salutation of the people of paradise. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please join me in welcoming my distinguished guests in the studio today, Miss Melissa Badola, who is a reading specialist and a teacher trainer. Hi Melissa, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
We're honored to have you on the studio today.
Thank you. The honor is mine.
Our next guest is Dr. Wael bin Saif Al-Harrasi, who is a chemical engineer and a researcher and an inventor in the oil and gas industry. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Wael.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa
How are you
barakatuh.
today?
I'm fine, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Today's topic is information explosion, blessing or menace. I'm not so sure what that means, Dr. Wael, but inshallah, let us see how it goes.
That's why we are here today.
The theme of today's talk is to discuss the effect of large amount of information and new technologies on individuals. To start off, Dr. Wael, what do we mean by information and information explosion in particular?
Well, basically, having a lot of information around us, we live in a time where the technological advances meant that we would have a lot of information, and the new technologies has affected the way we deliver, we communicate, and we transport information. It has been quite a big leap in the last 10 years in terms of amount of information being shared, how information is being delivered. For example, 10 years ago, a lot of countries didn't have access to the internet. They used to depend on TV or radio or newspapers or magazines. Nowadays, you have the internet, you have social websites, you have Facebook, Twitter, you have telephones turning into small mobile computers.
So what we understand from this is the accessibility to information is easier now.
That is one aspect of it. Explosion of information could have two angles, and people debate about it. Do we really have more information than we used to have 20, 30, 40 years ago? Or is it just information being more accessible? Much easier to get access to information. Because if we go to 500 years ago, we had a lot of libraries. The Muslims, whether they're Arabs or non-Arabs, contributed a lot into writing books in different areas. And we had like Darul Hikmah library, one of the largest libraries in Baghdad
At that time.
And until today, we have a lot of libraries. For example, one of the largest libraries, or the largest library existing today, is the Congress Library. It has been there for quite a long time before these technological advances. So the knowledge was there. However, it is quite difficult to go and access a particular information in a big library. What has happened is that big library is nowadays floating around us. Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? That's what we want to explore today, inshallah.
Let us see what Melissa has to say about this.
Oh.
As you in the educational field, you must have come across this phenomenon more than once, and maybe now it's even spreading more to the new generation. So what do you think of it?
Well, everything he said is evidenced in my classroom every day. So I often have to tell my students to shut off their cell phones instead of use paper dictionaries, for example. When I ask them to search for sources, they bring me back Wikipedia. We have to have discussions about what is appropriate information, what should be shared, and what are resources for our learning. It happens every day.
And why do you think they tend to go to different means of looking for information? Is it easier?
Yes.
Is it more fun than staying for long hours in the library looking for particular information?
It's far easier, and it's a new phenomenon. So perhaps our teachers aren't well versed or quite trained in how to hold the hand of the students and tell them the right things to guide them back to a more difficult process of searching for knowledge.
For sure, there's a lot of effects for this phenomenon on us and on everybody else. Let us start with the social effects on us, Dr. Weil. What do you think of this?
When I was researching this subject, I found it really difficult to find any credible source talking very seriously about social impacts of information explosion. The majority of sources are talking about the impact of this explosion of information on businesses and marketing.
Yeah.
Now, you would imagine how marketing and businesses would benefit from such informations. And just to give the listeners a little bit of a taste of what we are talking about and how information has changed. For example, decoding a human genome in a DNA. 10 years ago, well, let's say in 2003, it took 10 years to actually decode the genome. Today, it takes a week. So in 9 years, we made that leap into being able to do something really quick. Another example, the Sloan Digital Sky Survey project.
Yeah.
In 2002, it acquired data in the first few weeks, more than the whole history of astronomy. And in about 10 years, it acquired 140 terabytes. That's 140,000 gigabytes in 10 years. Now, the successor of that project is one that is going to be launched in Chile in 2013, next year. It has the capability of getting that information in 5 days. So what the previous one gathered in 10 years, the new satellite would be able to get it and acquire it in just 5 days.
Interesting.
The amount of books available on the internet are vast. And all of this started for a very simple reason. We are now able to have a single cable, a fiber optic, very thin, to carry tremendous amount of information. The normal copper cables did not do that. You needed large cables, large investments to carry out information. Nowadays, you can deliver a lot of information very, very cheaply. A single fiber can carry thousands of megabytes.
Maybe the demand on getting large amounts of information has enabled us to be advanced in the technologies that we use to transport the information.
That is one, but also the demand followed these sort of technological advances. One of the other things is, the electronic circuits, and how we make and we etch the electronic circuits on the circuit boards. They used to etch it and deposit gold. Gold is a very good conductor. The old technologies used to deposit gold in a way that there was a lot of waste. I had the privilege to be taught by one of the world leading in etching and deposition called the Professor Sudipta Roy. She is one of the leading experts in this, and she came up with an invention that revolutionized the world of etching these circuits, making it very accurate and make it very precise, very economical. These sort of things meant that we would be able to have very small mobile phones, and not only mobile phones. Now they are TVs, they are internet, they are everything. Basically, they are our lives. And the only reason is that we were able to etch in these circuit boards a lot of gold, and it became very cheap. All of this is changing us, changing the social life. How many of us can actually live with the phone switched off? What happens if we lose our phones?
We panic.
Well, you could break somebody's heart.
Oops.
Now, because this is used mainly in business, I think we should talk about the benefits. Okay, we don't want to scare the audience.
Now, Dr. Weil, for sure, with this vast amount of information, there must be some positives and negatives of this phenomenon.
Of course, from the title of today's show, we could, is it a blessing or is it a menace? It's actually both. It depends how you use the information, how you look at information explosion. Some of the benefits would be, for example, spotting business trends. So the more information you have about your clients, you can analyze the information you have, and you can then tailor the products according to their buying trends. And this is being used widely. So in business, it is being well utilized. It depends how you look at it. Some of them would be against it, using personal information, etc. One of the benefits would be preventing diseases. Although it's a bad example, but
Tell us more about that.
Swine flu, for example, how the world dealt with it. If we didn't have internet or this fast communication means, we wouldn't have dealt with it the way we did. Now, regardless of this example, whether people agree with what was done and how it was dealt with, regardless of that, we are just talking about the technology used and how fast the whole world almost responded and unified in the way they're going to deal with it. One of the other benefits would be combating crimes. Okay, you could share information about crimes
in different
and how they develop in different parts of the world. However, there is a negative point in this one. We will come later on it. Unlocking new resources for economic value. Again, using data, personal data, shopping, marketing, providing fresh insight into science. And this is evident every single day. We see this. There are a lot of other benefits. If you come to the drawbacks, one is data security. We have more data nowadays is being digitized. More books are being digital. Our information are not papers. They're not in archives anymore. They are on, you have cloud storage. And now people are not storing things in their personal computers anymore. They're storing it in a hard drive somewhere.
God knows where.
In the Amazon probably, I don't know. But somewhere they have no control over it anymore. For example, if you have nowadays your ATM cards, we used to have the normal swipe cards. Then we've been advanced into having the chip and pin. So you have the little chip. Now we went a step further. We had the radio frequency. So you only need to wave your wallet if your card is in there, and you pay it for it. The danger would be that previously with the chip and pin, someone would need to really pick your pocket to get the card. Nowadays, with a small receiver or transmitter, with a laptop, you just walks past you and would have all the information he wants from your card. So it's completely insecure. Although banks would try and make it secure, but there would be gaps. So data security is one of the major drawbacks.
Dr. Weil, do we have this technology here? Oh, not yet.
In Oman, not yet.
You're scaring us.
No.
I'm
No,
from
I'm not
America.
scaring you. In America, in Europe, they do have it. I don't intend to scare, but it's always wise to be cautious.
Yeah.
Another drawback would be data reveal normally more than intended. For example, in the US, the police was revealing information about how many arrests they were making to combat a particular crime in a particular city. Now, people looked at the data and they realized that on Wednesday, for example, there were no arrests. This is a tactic the police didn't want public to know, that they were not working on Wednesdays. For example, everybody probably knows CSI,
Yeah.
crime scene investigation. It does reveal a lot of tricks people play to hide their crimes. Some of them are really clever.
It's
Unfortunately,
educating them.
yes,
Yes,
unfortunately-
educating the criminals.
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, in LA, after an episode of CSI, a lot of criminals were unsolved because criminals realized that if you use bleach, oops,
You destroy the evidence.
you destroy some evidence. I wouldn't mention which one. I don't want to teach any.
No, please don't.
Okay, so if you come to the drawbacks on a more personal level, on the amount of information around us, would be wasting our time, fiddling with WhatsApp, BlackBerry, etc. Okay, the amount of information being fed to us unwillingly, but we have the urge to open up. Once it beeps, there you go. You open it up.
And you wonder, sometimes you get up in the morning and you find a message on your phone.
A message. You are lucky because I get 100 or
Really?
200.
And someone would be like, I got up with a bad mood.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
why do I want to know that you got up with a bad mood?
Exactly.
From having breakfast. And it's a trend, and everybody does it.
Yeah, so it is waste of time, loss of focus.
Yeah.
People are less focused nowadays. And this is one of the things we are going to touch and talk about and really focus on during our
Session today.
session today.
Yeah.
Finally, loss of productivity. If you lose focus, you lose productivity
Eventually.
eventually. So these are some of the benefits.
What about
and some of the
privacy?
tro-
I'm so concerned about privacy.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because everything is shared with everybody now, and
That's true.
all your private information is.
You would try not to be part of Facebook, for example. I'm not in favor of sharing my pictures, my personal information on Facebook. I might open a Facebook account for other reasons, to spread good, for example. However, if I don't open an account in Facebook, somebody will add me as a friend and would add, his date of birth is so-and-so, he studied in so-and-so, I was his colleague in so-and-so. So although you would need to approve it, but people do it on your behalf. And that's why we said, you can't control everything. So it's quite dangerous in some sense.
Now we always wonder, with this amount of information coming to us, are we more knowledgeable?
That's a very important question.
It is an important question.
Yeah. Maybe Melissa would let us know what's the difference between information and knowledge.
Information and knowledge. Well, information. Is it always good for us, information? Does it always have quality? Is it always well vetted? Means is it investigated? Where's the source? Who does it come from? Okay. You might say, is it a true source?
Yeah. You have, for example, Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
It's a good starting point, but it's not a place where you would go to get solid information from.
What I tell my students is that Wikipedia is absolutely not allowed. And why is that? Because people can come in, it's an open place that can be edited, and we don't know who started the wiki. For example, when I lived in Boston and I had students stand up and give presentations based on Wikipedia as a source, and I knew the information wasn't correct, and I had to stop them. I said, what is this source? I know about who won that game from the Boston Red Sox. I know the points that happened in that game. And so it was very easy to see right in front of me how erroneous this information was.
So lack of
Dangerous.
reliability.
It's totally unreliable.
Yeah. One of the other things is that in the Arab world, if you come and assess the type of websites you have, do we have scientific websites, Arabic, for
Right.
example? Do we have informative in a positive way? If you really look at it, we have more forums than anything else. Discussion forums. Who is writing in these forums?
Do people know the difference between
public.
.edu and .com and .org and .gov? And do they
Yeah.
know all of this? I often wonder. I ask my students to do this. And in addition, look for primary and secondary sources. Meaning, is this an academic thing? Does it come from a journal? Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. And then when they quote information, do they know who the person is? Is it actually a scholar or not? And most often they don't have an idea. So we have
Most
to
of the
discuss
time, it's
these
easy.
things.
It's easy information.
It's just the easiest
It's easy
thing we can
information.
get.
And-
The first hit on Google.
And what is happening today and all this information around us? Now, probably the answer would be information is not exactly the same as knowledge.
Right.
Knowledge is quite different. Knowledge is more specific than information. From the Islamic point of view, we know from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him,
Peace be upon him.
he used to ask, Allahumma anfa'ni bima 'allamtani wa 'allimni ma yanfa'uni wanfa'ni bima 'allamtani. He was asking Allah to guide him to learn what is beneficial to him and to help him benefit from what he's learned.
He's learned, yeah.
Okay, so we need to actually censor the information. We need to choose the information we get. And I tried to find out if people talked about this in the internet. However, this is a new subject. And how can I as an individual choose the right information? How can the person on the streets be able to deal with information explosion? Now, I couldn't find anything on the internet. However, I found something on the MIT website.
Yeah.
MIT is one of the best well-established universities. Massachusetts
also
Institute
in
of
Boston,
Technology.
yeah.
It's in Boston.
Yeah.
Now, in the business side, it said, in business, to optimally use data, there are 3 steps. 1, identify your sacred data.
Sacred, huh?
Yeah, sacred data. Identify what is the most important piece of information relevant to your situation, relevant to your life. So rather than saying sacred data as in business, find what is useful. You are a Muslim. One of the first things you need to learn, what is it? Graphical design? No. Quran. Quran is the first thing you need to learn about. You need to know how to read it because your life depends on it. Secondly, you need to learn about how to pray. You need to learn how to fulfill your duties within the society as well. So how to behave within a society. You need to learn how to read, write, mathematics, how to count, how to interact with people. Choose your sacred information. Whatever is the most important first. Prioritize.
Yes.
So the second step, what they say is define workflows that will use structured data. Now, maybe a listener would say, in English, please.
I was about to say that.
So I would say,
Structured data.
yeah, it is unstructured data. So in other words, organize your data. Have a structure. Categorize.
What
This
you
is-
need and what is...
Yeah,
what you
organize
don't
it.
The
need.
Organize
purpose,
it in a
the
way.
meaning, the use.
Yeah, where will you get the information from? How will you retrieve it?
Is it reliable?
Is it reliable? Wikipedia or a book? What is the best source of information? To me, it will always be a book. No matter what age I'm living in, it will always be a book. It wouldn't be a blog or an article. Those are all supplementary. A book is the best source of information. Okay? Now, you need to define the workflows, organize them. Finally, use the data. There is no use to learn something and not use it. By using it, see, knowledge is quite different from money. Money, the more you use, the more you lose. Knowledge, the more you use, the more knowledgeable you become.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are 3 steps on how to use data around us.
Dr. Weil turned up to be a wise person.
He is quite wise. Yeah.
You're
And what
embarrassing
about
me
you?
now.
But overall, are we coping with all this bombarded
I
information?
think we're beginning to cope. Our education system is beginning to kind of spring back. What I mean by that is the question he raised is very important, okay? It's about how we choose and select our own information. But I'm sitting in the seat wearing the hat of a teacher. So my job is to do that for students depending on their age or their developmental stage. So For example, when I teach children, I might actually choose their books for them. Children, meaning younger ones, not independent yet, before the age of 7. I would actually, and I've been taught to do this, select their text. But as they grow older, I would give them more freedom, meaning academic choice here. I would still limit the amount of text, the type of text, sort of like you might see a library. I would keep this in my classroom, and I would know what's in the books, which books are there, for which purpose and intention they could be used, and then I would say select from among these, because I know they are good.
Melissa, as you have worked with the younger generation and you've been in the education business for so long, how do we get them to loving books? For example, I have my daughter at home. When I buy her new book, she says, "Why do you buy me a book? I'll just use the iPad."
How old is your daughter?
She's 7.
Okay. Does she love everything Daddy loves, and does she love encouragement and like to be with Daddy?
You're embarrassing me now.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Well,
Do you read, Hatem?
Because I think that being a role model and sitting with your child and spending good time, quality time, really plays an important part in how the child develops a fondness for literacy and an enjoyment and a love of reading. So
You can nowadays train your child from birth to read. One of the best gifts
Now
I've ever
we're
received.
getting technical, Dr.
yes,
One of the best gifts I've ever received for my child. When Allah blessed me with my first child, Ayub, we got a gift from a friend of ours. It was a tiny little book, very colorful, that you just put it on the wrist of the child. It's made of fleece, very soft. And wherever we go, it's on his wrist, and he would open and read from a very early age. So he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's learning to flick pages.
that's right.
He's learning, he's curious. It is built in within a child to be curious
Right.
and focused at the same time.
Exactly.
So he would be flicking, and he knows each page would have something new. And that really pushes his buttons. He would just
Interesting.
flick more.
And you can ask them to start retelling the story, and they might not have any idea, but they've heard it so many times from their parent. They're picking the picture and telling you what's happening as if they're reading, even moving their finger, so they're starting to train themselves.
So you can always train your child. But what Melissa has said is very important. We need to control what we teach youngsters.
Yeah.
Now, although there are a lot of theories in education into categorizing the ages from 0 to, let's say, 3, 4 till 7, 8 till 11. But in our case here, let's just group all of these. We'll consider them as children, and we need to control.
I have a piece of advice. I was taught this in Teachers College, Teachers University. We were told that it's actually the cardinal sin of teaching to offer too many things. The sin is coverage and not depth. What does that mean? That means giving too many choices, too many options, not picking one and going through it slowly with the learner.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. If you look at the information we're talking about nowadays, available, okay, whether mobile phones or via any media, the information is just gushing through. If you can imagine it, it's gushing to your brain like a fire hose into a teacup. Imagine that. What would happen to the cup?
It'll just
Break.
Disintegrate,
Yeah,
explode.
explode.
So let us go back to the beginning. You remember in the olden days
Yeah.
when we were in school, we used to go through a lot of information.
It wasn't too old,
And-
really. I'm not old.
And that depends.
A
it
lot of
depends.
information, and I'm not so sure that we benefit from every single information that we got. We're made to memorize a lot of things. We're made to go through a lot of text.
That is
But,
true.
uh,
That is true. But however, I think I might be wrong, but that's a completely different story of being memorizing things
Yeah,
rather than
okay.
understanding. If you think that was a lot,
Yeah.
then imagine if you go and study today.
And this is chosen material, and it probably has a purpose. My students ask me, why am I doing this? Sometimes I give them the reason in detail. Sometimes I tell them, you need to learn this to go to the next step, and then you will understand.
What
Okay?
age group are your students, just to make it
Exactly.
clear to the listener?
Right now, I'm teaching college students, okay? But even then, there are things that they need to know the reasons for and they don't need to know. And it's my job as the teacher to know their ultimate goal and to guide them to that and to know how much I need to explain or how much I need to hold their hand.
Plus, a lot of parents get so excited and carried away, and they want their children to know absolutely everything. Now, to me, that's really bad. Because how many times do you need to call your child, for example, until he responds? Sometimes you call your child several times. You would call your son, Ayub, 2, 3, 4 times. He's not listening. It doesn't mean he's disrespecting you. He is so focused on
Occupied in
something.
something else.
Yeah,
He
he's
is. I
paying
wouldn't say
attention to
occupied.
something.
He's paying attention and he is focused, whether it's cartoon or reading a book or whatever. We are struggling as adults to focus. We have a lot of distractions and we can't focus. And focusing is one of the most valued assets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave children. So please, parents, teachers, everyone, do not take these away from the children.
Yeah.
Let them focus. Help them focus. Don't give them too much. And this is one of the most important things.
We use a lot of terms to describe that in teacher school. Autonomous learning, student-centered learning. They're choosing. We're walking away. They're becoming independent. These are things that we want for responsible citizens.
Yeah. Now, focusing is one of the major strategies to tackle information technology and information explosion. One might ask, what is focus? How can I focus? There are several steps. Now, to the listeners, pay attention now. These are the steps to build a strong focus, the ability to be able to focus. 1, choose the right environment. Don't just be anywhere and try and read and focus on a particular work.
But don't you agree that there are different types of personalities? Some people can,
Of course, choose what is right
And
for you.
there are different types of reading,
can
right?
read in a quiet place, and some of them prefer a loud
During
place.
school, during my final year, secondary school, I'm not encouraging anyone to do this, but it suited me. It suited my personality and the way I understand things. I used to study physics while I was watching the World Cup, 1998. That was good for me. It worked. It might not work for the others.
Was it a miracle?
No, not really. Not
Who
really. For example, during my first year at university, I struggled to go to a quiet place at the early library. I never went to the library to read. I would go take a book or several books, go home and read there.
Yeah.
I would open the window, the buses would be going on and off, and the noise
That's
helped
the
me.
environment that you're comfortable in.
Choose the right environment for you to focus.
As
Okay?
long as you're going to benefit and it's going to work for you,
Exactly,
then it's the
exactly.
best thing to do.
Secondly, eat healthy. 3, the mindset. You need to have the right mindset.
Now you
In
have to be
today's-
more specific when you say healthy. No biryani.
I wouldn't say no biryani, but
Shway.
Sure, yeah.
shwaya, yeah. The Prophet, peace be upon him,
Peace be upon him.
taught us what to eat, how to eat. 1/3 of your stomach for your food, 1/3 for your drink, and 1/3 for air to breathe. If you follow this, you'll be fine.
Okay.
Plus, choose the right thing. Avoid tinned food. Always try and eat fresh. Eat your greens, as your mama would say. Okay. Avoid eating a lot of red meat. Eat a lot of fish. It helps your memory.
Yes.
Oily fish. It helps your memory. Nuts, cashew nuts, bananas. These are good for your health. Oats. They release their energy very slowly and keeps you alert at the same time. Avoid having a lot of tea and coffee. People might say this would help me be alert. Me personally, I find 10 minutes rest or 15 minutes, not completely asleep, just close your eyes. It consumes a lot of energy. You open your eyes and you just lose energy like mad. Close your eyes, be somewhere quiet. 15 minutes, believe me,
It's sufficient.
you'll feel much more energized.
And by the way, water does a better job of waking up a person than caffeine. We might have an addiction, but that goes away after 2 days. I can tell you from experience.
Now, to have the right mindset, third point here. In today's world, we are so busy. The workplace has changed. There are a lot of distractions, a lot of noises, to the extent that doctors came up with a new term, ADT, if you have heard ADT, which is attention deficit trait. People just cannot concentrate. Now, to have them
Especially
right-
with the open layout offices.
Open layout offices, exactly. If you go to open layout offices, especially in our culture, I don't believe that this is suitable for our culture. We are naturally
Social.
No, noisy.
Rapsha.
Yes. We are naturally noisy. People will talk about work. Somebody else will talk about mandazi.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you go to work, okay, and do absolutely nothing, for 8 hours just listening to noise,
Yeah.
that is enough to stress you. So what you need the right mindset. Set some time to deal with your worries. Don't keep them in. Don't push them away. Set specific time. If you need it every day, every week, deal with your worries.
Yeah, but sometimes, Dr. Wael, you can't avoid, let's say if you're working in an open layout, you can't avoid that. People are noisy all over the time.
What about
Yeah.
an iPod?
Exactly. One of the strategies is that sometimes you use headphones or even connected to your phone, connected to your ears. People would think that you are talking on the phone.
Yeah.
Give them the impression that you are on the phone. They would be quieter.
Wouldn't that make
This
me
is-
antisocial and people feel uncomfortable in my presence?
If you have some very important work to do,
Oh, I see. Yes,
okay, you
definitely,
wouldn't use it all
definitely.
the time. Of course, we need to always be polite. So, one, set aside time to deal with your worries. Secondly, one task at a time. It will help you focus. It will help you achieve what you want to achieve.
Maybe for men.
Whether it is
Women
really...
are
I
multitask.
No, women, of course...
I need this more than you can understand. So I have to tell myself one step at a time. And as long as I can tell myself, I get there. So you can make the gender comment, but you might be right on in this example.
They are able to
Multitask.
multitask. However, it doesn't mean that they can focus more when they multitask. It applies to everybody that if you want more focus, then you need to concentrate on one thing at a time. You'll increase your efficiency and productivity. Definitely. You also need to close your email, mobile phone, applications, chatting applications. Shut it off for some time. Every day. You don't need distractions. You need to focus. One of the things that you can do is if you have emails on your phone, you can always set your phones not to download new emails so frequently because you'll be tempted to look at it every time.
Yeah.
And that would just distract you.
That will lead to other things. Not
Let
only
it
reading
download emails every hour, every 2 hours. So you will be looking at your emails and tempted to reply less frequently during the day, and you'll be more productive and more focused. Switch between high and low priority jobs and tasks.
Yes.
So
That
that
will
you-
reduce the stress. It will help you to focus more. Prioritize. Start with the most important. Start with the urgent
Urgent.
and urgent as well.
And time management is important, Dr.
Of
Wael.
course, we will talk about time management,
More
inshallah.
details.
Time management is really, really very important aspect. For example, one of the things that you can apply is the 80-20 sort of theory or rule, let's say. It is arguably if you spend 80% of your unfocused efforts, you will get 20% results. So 80% of your unfocused efforts will yield only 20% of the end result. In other words,
Does that mean that if I am focused, entirely focused for 20% of the time, it's the same as if I was unfocused for 80% of the time, I'm getting the same result?
yes.
Okay.
This is basically what it means. It means that only the 20% of your focused time yielded 80% of the result. That is amazing. So just imagine if you have focused for 30%, 40, 50, you are increasing exponentially your productivity. And a lot of people have learned to do that. And this is what in psychology is termed in flow. You are in flow,
Yeah.
which means that you are totally and deeply focused. You are able to completely be involved in a certain activity just for its own sake. You don't have to be pushed. Ego falls away, times just fly, and every action, every movement, every thought comes as a consequence of the previous task you did. Which means that everything is leading to the other very rapidly, and you are just unlocking your potential, all your potentials, just by doing more focusing in your work and generally in your life.
Does that mean that by even taking a break, and it's a purposeful, meaningful break, I'm increasing my potential when I go back to work? I can work more solidly,
Yes.
perhaps?
There are some theories about time management and taking breaks, and you actually elongate the breaks. I know that in reading, experts actually advise you to take. You are a reading
That's
expert.
right. That is true.
Yeah, you
So,
take
Dr.
it.
Wa'il,
Yeah.
I'll tell us more about
Hear me
reading
talk.
techniques.
Oh, reading techniques. Okay, so I started by talking to you about small children and choosing their reading. So if we move up as they're getting older, adolescents, I would say they can start selecting more of their reading, and actually they can read for longer, more sustained periods. We call this silent sustained reading. Also, what he was making mention of is taking breaks periodically throughout reading and taking time to reflect, having a journal or asking important, meaningful, and deep essential questions about things that have been read, the content being important. Now, we can apply this back to a religious principle, I think, but let me start here. In Teachers College, one of the key techniques for teaching reading that they teach us is to have the student connect with what they're reading in 3 different ways. Connecting the text to oneself and to other texts, and also to the world around. So let's think about that with the most holy of texts, our Holy Quran. Say somebody is reaching adolescence, starting to understand more of the words, the deeper meaning, and is going out into society and can see things in society and reflect back into reading. Okay? Also go to other texts that might be the traditions of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Peace be upon him.
Yeah. So we can connect the texts together to find deeper meaning and truth. We can connect understanding in a personal way from reading to the self and also to the world around us. That should start to happen in adolescence.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you, if you're reading a large amount of information at one particular time, can your mind observe all this information, or is it really picky?
I suppose that depends upon the student, but with curriculum, we carefully select it, and it also depends upon the purpose. Reading always goes back to purpose. Is the student reading for pleasure and to foster a love of reading? Is the student reading for comprehension of vocabulary words and concepts, which is what becomes deeper as we get into adolescence? In the beginning, with young children, we just want them to be able to pronounce the words, to say them, to recognize the words. As they're getting older, we want them to more deeply understand their meaning and how to use them in context, okay? And as they're older than that, and at this point, they're starting to apply understanding. I would say that my students cannot focus for long periods of time on information that is too difficult for them to understand. So you match the difficulty and carefully pick the topics and then discuss with the student. You would never leave them alone with a passage, especially a deeper passage.
I remember I attended a very intensive course for 2 weeks, and we had to finish 2 volumes of books in the 2 weeks. Volumes, we're talking about 300 to 400 pages each. Now, the lecturer, I think he was 80 years old. Now, he had a lot of experience, and he knew how to keep us focused. We would have a break. After the break, he would switch on a video, less than a minute short, a funny video, a very funny video. And everyone would be laughing, and that laughter would just energize you. And
make you go on.
It's true.
Yeah, it keeps you go on. We would start from 8 till 5, for example, but we are always focused.
Right, that's right. So the point of these interruptions is not distractions. It's something along the same vein. What I mean is I might stop and tell a story or ask questions of my students to gauge their understanding. I'm really looking for a response that shows me that they understand what they're reading.
Yes. Good that you mentioned the word interruptions, because the listeners would want to know, for example, that, okay, we've been talking about focus. How can we focus? But there are a lot of interruptions. How do we deal with those interruptions? There are several steps that I might be able to just lay out, and maybe you could all chip in and help to manage interruptions into your daily life. If you want to focus on a particular task, or reading a book, or doing anything in life, then there are a few things that you need to do. One, keep an interruptions log. So you want to know, what are the things that keep distracting me from doing this task, or any task? Keep a log. Start with, let's say, a person. What time did he come? What time did he go? Was it important?
Or maybe
Was it urgent? Was it worth it?
the most common
Yeah.
one is the phone.
Yeah, well,
It could be the phone, it could be individuals, it could be anything. It could be people, it could be a group, it could be
Yes.
work, but it's
System.
not important.
the back of my mind. Yeah.
Yes. So keep a log. Do it for a week, for example, a whole week. Once you have that data, the second step, analyze it. Look at what happened. During that week, who did interrupt you? How many times? What for? Was it important? Was it urgent?
Yeah.
Take the things that you feel, yes, these were worth interrupting me.
Yes, and for a teacher, depending on the age and developmental stage of the student, I could ask them to do their own reflective process, keep it in their journal, and I could constantly remind them until they can do it on their own.
Yeah.
This is something that, in fact, I explicitly grade. I say, okay, did you come to class late? Did you check your cell phone? Did you do this? This is called paying attention and keeping focus. We give marks for that.
Yeah. I mean, once you analyze the data and you find out, okay, these are the certain activities or interruptions that are worth the interruption, you need to schedule some contingency time. Schedule it within your day that today I would have 10, 20 minutes scheduled for such interruptions. For the important ones
But
that you feel that are regularly
you would
happening
agree,
in your life.
you would agree with me, Dr. Wild, that sometimes it's difficult to get rid of bad habits. And distractions are bad habits sometimes.
Of course.
Especially when you have a say, you are involved in it, you're part of it. Are there any ways or steps that we can take, you know, to get rid of these
Control your
bad
phone
habits?
usage.
How?
How? For example, you know that you might call somebody. You need to know a particular information. What time will he be coming to see you? What time are you meeting? Send him a text message. Don't call, because you might call that person and he would start talking about other stuff. You don't have the time. Send a text message rather than make a phone call. Make it short. Control your phone usage in terms of when do you pick up your phone. For example, some people might realize that between, let's say, 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, you actually don't pick up your phone at all.
No wonder
You just
I always call you and you don't pick up.
I know. No, I'm kidding.
There are some
I don't
times there are some times when I don't pick my phone. And there is one other thing. You need to catch your breath. What I mean with this is both literally breathe. Secondly, someone might come and interrupt you. And he would say, oh, this is urgent. I'm in deep trouble. Important.
And you would sympathize with them.
Sympathize and simply just believe them. However, you need to take a deep breath. Think about what he is saying. Is it really worth interruption? Sometimes not. Stop them. Politely say, I will deal with it later. One of the ways to deal with interruptions. Learn to say no. Say
I've
to
always
people,
had a debate with this regarding saying no.
You need to
It
learn
might
to say
be
no. Because
culturally not accepted.
yes, but culturally...
I don't think it's
People
just
don't-
culture, because
yeah.
I'm not from this culture. I think it's... I
You're
think
already
it's,
part of it now.
Hey, well, I mean, thank you.
You need to say
Yeah,
no.
but tell us about
Oh,
your experience.
oh, my
as you're coming
experience
from the
saying
West.
no.
How do you say no?
How do you say no? No. Well, I was taught to say no, and that there's a power in saying no, but that after we say no, we need to give an explanation of why.
Yes.
A short and a reason. Okay, especially to students, they have to know that there are certain kinds of limits. But I wouldn't ever just say no, full stop, no. It's not something I'm quite comfortable with, and
We can't accept rejection as humans. We can't accept
Yeah.
rejection.
But
We
do
don't
you
like
think,
it.
Do you think in our culture we can implement this? We can start doing this, saying no in a polite way.
I can, even as a foreign visitor, because I'm not quite sure what's right to say and polite in certain situations. So I don't know that it's a cultural phenomenon or it's just a human experience. I mean, we all have obligations when we visit people. We have etiquette, we have manners, we have all these things
Yeah.
we have to consider.
From experience, I mean, in the last few months, I've been quite busy. And I've had quite a lot of social invitations. However, I always kept saying, sorry. Let's say, for example, from April till October, I can't be in any social gathering because I have very busy schedule. So I would say no, but I would apologize for it and tell them that I was busy doing this, this, and that.
And
you
do
don't
think
have to.
People
but,
respond to you positively.
And from what I have experienced, is that people do understand.
They don't get
Yeah.
offended.
No, they don't. They don't. So you must say no sometimes. One of the most important things as well, you need to let people know when are you available and when you are not. For example, I tell everyone that my phone is available. I will pick up my phone until 9:59 p.m. 10 o'clock is where you might call, but I will not answer. The reason is I want the time for me. That time, 10 o'clock onwards, I do not call anyone. I do not receive any calls.
What do you do when people respond in a way that seems negative? They say, so, why didn't you answer my call? Or, why didn't you come to my son's something or another? How would you respond to this?
Normally, I just be frank with them. I tell them, I'm sorry, but this time is very valuable to me, and I normally do not pick up the phone. If it was urgent, I would have expected you to send me a text message. I would read it, and then I would respond to you immediately. Now, there are people whom I can't do this to.
Yeah.
I can't do this to my mom and dad. If they call, I would answer at any time. That's why I never, for example, shut off completely the mobile phone. So these are the steps, and I hope we have all benefit from
Let
all
us
of this.
go back to information.
Information!
We've always been talking about information.
Okay.
The whole
Information,
time.
Information. If information is a menace in somehow,
Yeah.
what should we do about it? Are there ways to solve these issues or to address them in a particular way that to reduce the effect of information?
Yeah.
As we said, there is no
Te-
boundaries for these.
Teaching strategies and not just saying, these are the search strategies, follow these rules. Explaining the consequences of finding information that is not true or is not good. What can happen to people when they follow things that are not good for them.
If we value time,
Yeah.
then we need to consider the issue of information explosion very seriously. Let's take some examples. If you browse the internet and somebody sends you a YouTube link in your WhatsApp, for example, you would, one, respond to the message you've just received. You would click on it.
Yeah.
You would open YouTube, and then there would be other related
That's
sort of
right.
YouTube
Videos.
And unconsciously sometimes you just do things.
Curiosity.
And curiosity, you would look at the second, third, fourth.
And a page
Just
opens another,
wasted-
and a page opens another.
You've just wasted some time. You go and shop in Amazon. Amazon would tell you, for example, oh, people bought this, also like this.
We recommend you.
They also bought
things.
this with it. Would you like? It is just wasting your time. You log out of your Hotmail account, for example, and immediately news flash about things that completely irrelevant to you.
So,
One of the most dangerous things about information explosions is that people tend to worry about things that do not concern them
That's exactly right.
whatsoever.
can I tie it back to religion a little bit? Is it okay?
Yeah,
So, from
sure,
my
sure.
personal experience as a new Muslim, I received a number of books as gifts that are beautiful and lovely, and I would say thank you to everybody for those books. I would add an additional idea here, which would be I might not always understand all the books that I receive, okay? And I have a lot of them, and so I might need help categorizing them, putting them into different groups. I might need to know when to read which one first. When I receive YouTube videos or information, if it's a forward and it's not specifically for me, from somebody who knows me, what I'm going through, cares about me, has a personal connection to me, I probably won't open it. And it's no offense, it's because of the personal phase of development that I have in my life. So that's my personal connection to that.
How did you deal with this vast amount of information pushed towards you?
I picked a couple of people to give me some advice. And so Dr. Wa'il right here is one of them. And I asked a few questions and he helped me categorize a few things so that I knew which things sort of went together. And then I started to follow a bit of a curriculum that was made by many different people here. So I'm lucky to know both of you and to
Thank
have
you.
the support
Thank
of
you.
the
We are
system that exists here in Oman.
So, any last advice to the next generation in terms of how to utilize this amount of information, how to prioritize, how to focus?
You have just mentioned all of them.
Yeah.
And we'll just repeat and re-emphasize again
Okay.
that the explosion of information, the amount of information available could be really detrimental to us if we don't know how to use it. And we need to choose what to read, where to read, and how much time we spend with the internet.
And the sources of information
and
that
sources-
And not only the
sources of
sources,
information.
but with whom to discuss those sources and to look for somebody trusted that you feel comfortable discussing certain topics with.
Yeah, sometimes, how detrimental this can be. Because information is floating around us from all over the world, we are getting distractions and disruptions and other people's worries and concerns into our lives without feeling. For example, not talking about worries as a bad thing, but let's talk about something else. The rivalry between Real Madrid and Barcelona, okay, is a very, very well-known rivalry. Now, that rivalry was known in Spain. Now it's known all over the world. We have youngsters in Oman wasting time into that rivalry. I'm a big football fan. I play football. I love to watch Real Madrid play. I love watch Barcelona play. I love all the effort and the good football they play. However, I wouldn't bother to know who won or who lost. I wouldn't bother to put a sticker in my car. I wouldn't waste time doing all of that. Focus, guys. Focus on things that will affect your life positively.
Priorities, building your future.
If one of the teams won the second day, the supporters of the second team would
It's a shame.
would be feeling so bad.
And this is why we said information of explosion could be a menace. And this is one of the reasons.
And there are dire consequences. We have violence that erupts after matches. So
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that I really need to mention is the efforts that our Minister of Education put, Dr. Madiha Shaybaniya, recently in removing certain subjects from the curriculum for students to focus more on the core subjects. This was a very positive change. And we really salute her for what she did and all the teams that worked together in the Ministry of Education in removing these subjects. Just imagine at school you need to learn about, for example, graphical design. Why? How important is that? And we are very thankful to the efforts that the ministry and the minister herself did in order to
on establishing the
reintroduce
core, especially for the younger ones as they move up. Specialization in different kind of abstract fields is something that can happen at a later phase.
I just missed out one point: the effect of ideologies on us because of this vast amount of information.
It's a wide
us.
subject. If we dedicate the whole month of Ramadan, we wouldn't finish to talk about this subject. I hope we've touched slightly on this topic today, and I hope that the listeners would have a feel and at least would start and research about this and more cautious, be more aware about this subject. This is just to raise awareness, not to have in-depth information.
Dr. Wael bin Saif Al-Harasi and Miss Melissa Bedola, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
You're welcome.
And I'm sure our audience have enjoyed today's session, and it was very beneficial and fruitful. I myself have learned a lot from both of you, and I thank you again and hope to see you inshallah in other sessions.
Inshallah. Thank you for having us.
Dear listeners, I'm your host Hatem Al-Absalam, signing off for today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You have been listening to Reaching Out Through Dialogue.